from Joseph. This is a Drash from Parashat Vayigash by yours truly. What we will study today is three things. Three leadership functions. What do we mean when we talk about leadership? Secondly, 5 markers of emotional intelligence, which in recent years has been highlighted as a necessary component of good leadership. And thirdly, lessons for ourselves. So let's continue. I want to make 3 empowerment promises to you. 3 things that will happen by your participating in this drash. First, you will better understand how good leaders behave. Second, you will learn criteria for evaluating Joseph and other leaders. This is not just leaders in the Bible, but leaders in your own life. It's important that we follow people who are worthy of our allegiance. That's crucial. And when we follow the wrong people, chaos eventually occurs. And finally, you will be equipped to better lead others and to choose the right leaders to follow. So that's my promise to you if you'll participate in this drash. So let's continue. When we talk about leadership, there are, broadly speaking, 3 things that we talk about. First is task behaviors. And I'd like David Siegel to please read this paragraph, if he would.
Task behaviors. Those activities a leader does to accomplish the task or vision for which the structure, organization, community, group exists. Task behaviors involve clarifying goals, setting up structures to help reach them, holding people accountable, disciplining when necessary, and in short, to act responsibly to accomplish goals. How did Joseph do?
Yes, how did Joseph do? Okay, folks, I'm asking you now, in this department, how did Joseph do? Did he demonstrate anywhere a capacity to get the job done? Now, David Siegel is nodding his head. David Siegel's a very smart man, but I ought to see a lot of nodding heads here. The only nodding heads I see are those heads that are falling asleep. So let's get to this question. In the story of Joseph, does he demonstrate a capacity to get the job done? Task behaviors. Somebody talk to me.
Yes, he did.
Who's that?
That's Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Somebody else talk to me and tell me why you have this strange opinion.
I'd like to say something really quick. I hope not to take long.
If it's, I know it'll be a great thought coming from you, but it needs to be directly related to the question that I just asked. Has Joseph demonstrated a capacity to get the job done and to organize other people to get the job done?
Yes,
help me.
Perfectly.
How?
And
How,
there's
please,
a
Johnny?
reason. Because of all the experience that he went through, including being ripped out of his families, out of his father's family.
Where does the Torah describe Joseph getting the job done, performing well in task behaviors?
In several
Gave
places.
specific instructions to his brothers.
What about, okay, let me ask, when he was let's start with this. When he was sold as a slave to Potiphar, did Potiphar show any approval of Joseph's job performance?
Absolutely.
Yes, he appointed him to be head of his household, manage the whole house.
He appointed him to be head of his whole household, and the scripture says that the Lord was with Joseph in anything he did. Now, I want people to raise their hands or at least mention their names from now on. What about when he was in prison? was there any sign that he found favor and that he was involved in good job performance? Yes, Patricia.
Well, yes, he was always given, in every situation, he was given responsibility. And the reason he was given that is he was able to manage well.
Everybody, even in prison, he
Yes.
was put in charge of people because the jailer said, this guy gets the job done. This guy can take care of business. And what about in Egypt? When he comes out of prison after 20 years, actually, he was about a dozen years in prison. When he comes out of prison, and he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, somebody help me. Does Pharaoh recognize him to be a guy who can get the job done? Does Joseph suggest any kind of logistics in order to deal with this coming famine? Alan Andrews, help me, Alan. I'm being ignored.
No, he's
Sure.
answering you, but I think he forgot to unmute. He's actually.
Okay, go ahead, Alan. Yeah.
Oh, he's unmuted, but you're not hearing him. So
Yeah,
something's going
I'm
on.
sorry. I'm sorry, Alan. I would have loved to hear from you. Okay, somebody else, tell me.
Okay, Stuart, the
Yes,
one thing I've noticed about the story of Joseph is that he was given a small task, and every task after that had more and more responsibility
Yeah.
until finally he was given the job of saying, okay, you over there, put the wheat over there, you over there, put the wheat there, do this. We've got 7 years to pull this together. And he did it. He came in with a plan and he executed it.
he was the project manager for saving the entire Fertile Crescent from famine.
Yeah.
He was Pharaoh appointed him as second in command in all of Egypt. I get real excited about this. This story of Joseph moves me deeply. I wanted to interrupt the reading of it in order to report on that. And I've been reading this story for a long time. And I want you all to enter into it. Yes, of course, Joseph demonstrated conspicuous task behaviors in every situation. And finally, after taking care of all Egypt, he is used by God to save the entire elect people. The entire chosen people are rescued from certain death by Joseph. This is hot stuff. Now, I've got to, with due respect, I've got to get rid of your faces staring at me and get back to the Drash. So, task behaviors, how did Joseph do? He was a great leader in terms of task behaviors. Secondly, relationship behaviors. Michael David Ramos, please, would you read about relationship behaviors?
Those activities which a leader does to affirm followers, to provide an atmosphere congenial to accomplishing work, to give emotional and spiritual support for followers so that they can mature. In short, to act relationally with followers in order to enable them to develop and be effective in their contribution to the organization, group, or community.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, how was Joseph in terms of relationship behaviors?
Well, I've spoken, so I don't know if you want to give someone else a chance.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. What I love about Joseph is that when his brothers realize, when he knows who they are, and they've realized their guilt, I love that Joseph puts them at ease. That's emotional intelligence. He extends himself in every possible way to ease their guilt, their regret, all of that. He says, no, God did it. He meant it for good. Look at it that way. Don't beat yourselves to death.
In every situation, he takes, this is extraordinary. In every situation, he takes care of his people. In the prison, the baker and the cupbearer have dreams that they can't interpret, and he helps them. In every situation, he takes care of his people when he's in Potiphar's house. Potiphar, he's a teenager. We're going to look at this a little bit later. He's a teenager, and his boss's wife is coming on to him constantly. And he doesn't succumb. He says, because how could I sin against God and against your husband, who's put me in charge of his house? As a leader, he takes care of his people. I don't have words to express my admiration for Joseph and my love for this story. This story, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the greatest stories in all of human literature. What is told and how it is told. So in terms of relationship behaviors, which we're going to be looking at some more shortly, in terms of relationship behaviors, Joseph is a star. Okay? Now moving on, just a second. There's one more. And we got to go back here a little bit. Come on, baby, help me. That's it. Inspirational behaviors. All right. Lori Simerson, would you read about inspirational behaviors, please? If you're reading, you must be muted because I can't hear you. Okay, Rusty, would you please read?
Believer leadership is externally directed. That is, goals result from vision from God. These leaders must receive God-given leadings and pass these on to followers, moving them toward recognizing, accepting, and participating in bringing about that God-given vision.
Right. Leaders in spiritual communities such as we seek, such as we are, leaders must receive their vision from God in some capacity, in some way, and they must be adept at passing that vision on to their subordinates, to the other members of the organization or congregation or group of whatever kind. So, do we see in Joseph's career with his brothers any manner in which Joseph advances their knowledge of God's will for the group? Do we see that?
Yeah.
Yes. Who wants to suggest?
I
Okay, go ahead.
I would
Go ahead. Who is it? Lori? Go ahead, Lori.
Lori, yes. I just, when he, oh my gosh, the idea just left my mind. I can't believe it.
Okay, we'll let it come back. Again, the
Okay,
question
thank
is,
you.
does he advance his family's perception of the will of God and of God's vision for what is going to happen with these people?
Early on in this is Rusty. Early on in his story, he tells them of the dreams he had, and they got rather annoyed, thinking that, we're going to bow down. He's going to rule over us. He's this kid. Now, as an adult, with his brothers, he says, don't worry. It wasn't that you did something wrong. It was that God used you. And what happened, the awful things that happened, he used you to get me to this point to be able to save all these people.
And he says that God sent me here in order to preserve life, to preserve. So he advances their conception of what God is doing in the world. Now, with spiritual leaders of communities, churches, synagogues, Kavarot, these three things, task behaviors, relational behaviors, and inspirational behaviors are all important. Now, truly, some leaders, I'm strong in some areas. Administratively, I am handicapped, So sometimes leaders do not have all the bells and whistles, so they recruit to their weakness. That's good. They realize this needs to be done. I need to have help in that area. So that's allowable. But these are three things that leadership in a spiritual community is concerned with: task behaviors, relational behaviors, and inspirational behaviors. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So just hold on a second while I've been looking at your lovely faces. Now I have to look again at the screen. Let's move ahead. This man is Daniel Goleman. Looks like Coleman, but it's Goleman. And he wrote a book on emotional intelligence called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. He's expanding on the idea of relational behaviors, and he's using a concept that he's explored greatly. He's a psychologist and an organizational psychologist. And it's a component of relational intelligence, which is called emotional intelligence. And I'd like someone to volunteer to read this, please.
I'll be happy to read that, Rabbi.
Would you please?
Emotional intelligence, a competency at the root of good relational leadership, defined by Daniel Goleman as a person's ability to manage his feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively.
Okay, this again, read that definition again.
A person's ability to manage his feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively.
Okay, question, by a show of hands. How many of you have ever worked with or for somebody who blows up, who loses his temper or her temper inappropriately? How many of you have ever experienced that? Is that a good thing for leadership? Does that create warm fuzzies in the community? We could spend the next week exchanging stories about the wreckage and the damage that people who are leaders who don't have the emotional intelligence to control their emotions. Or let me look again at the, all right, the emotional, just a second. The emotional intelligence, a person's ability to manage his feelings or her feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively. So let's look more at emotional intelligence. Let me see by a nodding of the heads. Are you getting anything out of this, Drash?
Yeah.
Okay, some of you are. You know, I know it's a little bit late, and that's unavoidable, but this is very life related, and I want you to experience it. So here we go. Looking more deeply at emotional intelligence, there are 5 ways we measure emotional intelligence. I'd like someone, Erica, would you read, please, Erica?
Yes. 5 metrics of emotional intelligence. Number 1, the keystone to emotional intelligence is the ability to detect and identify your own emotions, such as being aware, I am angry at the moment. Does the mature Joseph seem to be self-aware?
Yeah. He is. He's we don't know, and someday may God grant that we can actually talk to Joseph in the kingdom. But what kind of emotions were racing through him when he was in prison? It's interesting when he's brought out of prison, when he talks to the baker and the cupbearer in prison, he tells them that he was unjustly sold into slavery and framed, but he does not even mention his brothers. He doesn't say, my SOB brothers sold me into slavery. And when he meets Pharaoh, he doesn't say that either. It's extraordinary to me what emotional management is evident in Joseph. He's aware. He was certainly aware of his feelings as he goes through this whole drama with his brothers when they come down to Egypt 3 times. He's aware of what he's feeling, but he manages it. He holds out for a long time before he reveals himself to his brothers. Wow. This is important in a leader, whether you're leading one person, one family, or 100 people, or 1,000 people. These things are important. So the first metric of emotional intelligence is the ability to detect and identify your own emotions. I knew a man once who told me something that was amazing. He said, I can be angry for 3 days and not know it. I couldn't understand that, but there are people who are very out of touch with their own emotions, and that's a problem. So number 2, Erica, you're on a roll, Erica. Read number 2 here, the second metric.
Managing emotions like anger and other frustrations while addressing their roots in order to maintain emotional stability.
Right. In other words, it's not enough that you know what you're feeling, but do you manage those feelings and other frustrations like anger so in a constructive way? Did Joseph demonstrate this? Well, look at Joseph in Potiphar's house. He's being seduced by the boss's wife. He's a teenager. He's a prisoner. Did he feel physical lust for the woman? Most certainly. He's a human being, but he managed this frustration, this sexual frustration. He managed it, and his emotions of anger. He may have been quite angry when his brothers came down, when he saw them all there. He may have had a flash of anger, but we don't see it demonstrated. So by the second metric of emotional intelligence, Joseph scores high. Number 3, Erica.
Master aptitude. A capacity to delay impulsive gratifications in order to better serve your goals.
That's Joseph with Potiphar's wife. Go on.
Motivating yourself to believe you are capable of doing what needs to be done. Adjusting so as to better handle defeat and difficulties, believing you will find a way to achieve what you want.
Okay. Did Joseph demonstrate a capacity to handle difficulties and defeat?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know-
absolutely.
None of us can really imagine what Pharaoh's prison was like. And Joseph and he didn't have a sentence where he knew when he was going to get out of there. He might have spent the rest of his life there. But he demonstrated a capacity to handle those emotions and to believe that things were going to continue to go forward in his life despite the circumstances. So that's number 3. Number 4, Erica, please.
Recognizing emotions in others by detecting what others are feeling from their body language, tone of speech, and other signals. This is other awareness.
Yeah.
And also severe personality disorders, such as malignant narcissism and sociopathy, embody a radical lack of such empathy.
There are some people who are really not aware of other people's emotional lives. They don't care. It's just true. Narcissists and in most extreme people who have a sociopathy, they have no conscience, no awareness of other people's emotions. They can murder people and not feel a twinge of anything. But as a strength, it's recognizing other people's emotions by detecting what others are feeling by their body language, the tone of speech, and other signals. Did Joseph demonstrate that in our story?
I would say so.
He's aware of his brother's feelings, and when he sends him down up to Canaan to pick up his father, he says, "Don't fight with one another on the way." That's what a touch that is in the story. He says, "Don't fight," because he knows his brothers. He knows their emotional life, and he says he knows they're going to be blaming each other all the way home. He says, "Don't do that." He demonstrates extraordinary capacity of what others are feeling, even when he can't discuss it with them. As when his brothers comes up, he can't reveal himself to them yet. So he's observing what's going on with them by seeing the cues. And finally, handling relationships. An emotionally intelligent person takes responsibility for the consequences of his or her behavior, the consequences on others and on their feelings. Such persons will be trusted and loved because they know how to keep other people happy and satisfied, how to influence them toward accomplishing goals while uplifting the depressed to their own positivity. Did any of you ever work for somebody who was psychologically good for you? Anybody? And such a person develops great loyalty in their people because they look, they look out for you. You know they're aware that they care. And this is good for the whole organization because people will be very loyal to such a person. So let's take this thing home. Let's apply this wisdom. We need to seek, let's see, Johanna Hagens, would you read this, please?
Applying this wisdom, seek leaders who are strong on task behaviors, relationship behaviors, and inspirational behaviors. It is not good to have spiritual leaders who get the job done and are even spiritually gifted while misusing people.
Okay, look at that. Look at that second point. There's a lot of abuse of various levels and kinds in spiritual communities. People are impressed with a leader because he's got great spiritual gifts. He's a great communicator. He's got tremendous charisma. But if a leader misuses people, don't follow that person. Thirdly, Johanna.
Yeah, I had to go that route, Rabbi, I really did. Okay, therefore prefer and treasure leaders who are emotionally intelligent in addition to their other qualifications. Beware of those who are not.
Okay.
I have to get rid of that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. Besides Richard, who will volunteer first and therefore get you all off the spot, tell me one thing you're going to go away with from this drash that is useful in your life and the lives of people you know. One thing.
Erica?
Go ahead, Erica.
Okay.
Recognize when I'm feeling grumpy or dissatisfied and make sure I'm not exhibiting that in my responses to people that I'm living with, working with.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I can say something.
Okay.
I have to be concerned about, because I've had a lot of trauma. I'm aware of depression and anxiety. I believe I have pervasive anxiety. And I have to struggle, and also workplaces have been very difficult for me because certain businesses have been very petty, different things like that. I've just been very, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think I'm overly sensitized I don't have a thick skin, is what I'm saying.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
I know my negative experiences have been in the long run learning experiences, but they were very painful, in an employment situation that I still think about, not every week, but frequently. And this is years ago. So yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Johanna, for your personal contribution.
Yeah.
And I thank you, all of you, for staying present in this drash. I know the service was long, and I'm glad you stayed. But more importantly, I'm desirous that you got something out of this drash for your life. It's not about me. It's not about staying because Rabbi Stewart would appreciate you staying. I want you to stay because your life is being changed. So let me wish you a Shabbat Shalom and a Happy New Year. And thank you so much for your attention.